April 27, 2024. What's going on with KalashnikovUSA, KUSA, KUSA? Hi, Misha here, and we're going to go over what has happened for sure, what trusted sources say is going on, and maybe touch on speculation a little bit, but I'm going to try to avoid that as much as possible. This news kind of dropped while I was out of town last weekend, and came back tired and dirty and had to deal with this new thing. But the situation has actually been brewing, as these situations do, for weeks, if not even months. But first, a couple of announcements. One that's new. I did a live stream last night, April 26th, and haven't done one in a while, so it went on for quite a while. And there were a lot of AK questions, and that's fine. I'm happy to answer AK questions. While some were new, many were things that I had already addressed, like what's the best 5.56 AK, what's better, the Zastava or the WBP. You get the idea. And of course, we talked about KSUA. I've been thinking about doing something, and that pushed me over the edge. I'm going to be starting another channel just dedicated to AKs. Right now, the working title is Misha's AK World. We'll see if that sticks. Here's my thought. I can get into more esoteric, nitpicky videos over there without bogging down the main Mishaco channel. I can also repeat myself over there because I hate doing which is better video all the time here because it's not of interest to everyone. And I can repost some older videos that, while, yeah, they're years in the past, are still relevant. One that comes to mind is the video I did looking in depth at the WASR 1063 specifically. Other videos on like the Arsenal SLR 104FR, and of course the Sega, which is related to the KUSA. So I want to just do that to kind of have an AK 24/7, all AK all the time, and I can be a little more informal over there. We'll see how it goes. Let me know what you think. I will post some exclusive content over there, maybe some re-edits, and again, I'll put some of the backlog AK videos because, there's over 1,400 videos on this channel alone, and then I have over 1,100 on my personal channel. While most of them are not gun related, some are. I just thought it might be a good idea to put the AK stuff in one spot. So that should be coming quite soon. And in fact, I might do a companion video to this one, going more in depth with KalashnikovUSA over there as kind of an inaugural video. But now to the main attraction. As always, if you could, please do like, share, and subscribe. And as always, if you'd like to help us get to the range, maybe buy some steel targets, check out the link to Patreon. And with that, let's talk American Sega clones. So these are my three. The KR9 I intended to get, 9mm, based on the Sega 9 itself, based on the Vithiaz submachine gun. Then we have the KR103 side folder. I definitely wanted to get hands on this one, but I really wasn't planning on keeping one, but I just never got around to selling it. This, of course, is based on the Sega SGL 2194, itself a semi-automatic version of the AK-103 7.62x39. And then finally, in the most recent release that KUSA did, the KP-104, originally a pistol. I put it into carbine configuration because that was kind of when the brace stuff was kicking off and didn't really want to deal with it, so put on a extended CNC Warrior brake. And this too is in 7.62x39 and is based on the AK 104. We really never had a Sega like this. There was one SGL, sort of, but it was a fixed stock, so these two on top are pretty unique. We never had the Sega 9s. And even the 103 style, the SGL 2194s were hard to get. So that kind of keys you into why I wanted these. Even though, of course, I still have a couple of authentic Sega. And I know people want me to say Sega. I know. I'm still going to say Sega. My speech, my TTS says Sega. I've listened to it say that name that way so many times over so many years. Yeah, one of those things we just got to deal with. The KR9, or KP9 pistol version, was really KUSA's second major product line. Developed in 2018, released in 2019. And the first one that I really wanted to try out is at the end. I mean, that's 5 years ago now. What's going on? The scuttlebutt for about the last week is that KUSA is bankrupt. They're out of business. Kaputs. No more warranty. No more guns. Close their doors. Is it true? No. And yes. Very helpful answer, isn't it? Anyway, we'll get there. But first, who is KalashnikovUSA? In the live stream last night, one gentleman didn't even realize the guns had come out. And that's because, at least in the beginning, they were quite low-rate production. And that was by design. The story begins with RWC, Russian Weapons Company Corporation, what have you, down in Florida. They imported the Sega, but of course in 2014, starting in March, the U.S. looked at sanctioning sectors of the Russian military industrial complex, banking industries, energy sources, and in June, the Izhmash, now at the time Kalashnikov concerned, they recently just changed their name from that KC in 2013, got lumped in. So by July of 2014, there was an effective sanction ban on Sega imports. Well, just about a year later, at the end of June 2015, KUSA, which was a trade name, KalashnikovUSA, trade name used by RWC, announced they would be building Russian-style, and these would be, modern-style Russian guns in the USA. And from the get-go, we pretty much knew that they were going to be really close to Russian spec within reason. And the first ones that really got developed here and that came out around 2018 were the KS-12 and KS-12T shotguns. Essentially American versions of the Sega 12 shotgun. I didn't need one of those. I've had Sega 12s and, since they came around, so yeah. But when this Sega 9 copy was announced, this intrigued me. And I worked on getting one after SHOT Show 2019. And I looked at my books and I logged this one in around April or May of 2019. It's a relatively low serial number, I think around 1100. So not the smallest, but pretty early production gun. And I wanted the KR9 for the stock, and I didn't mind the 16-inch barrel. I've already cut it down. Yeah, a lot of people went with the KP9 pistol with the 9 1/4 barrel. That's cool too. One nice thing though, they made copies of the Russian mags, including having the metal reinforcements. Even if you didn't want the guns, having the mags and spare parts was a good thing. This has been a very good, dependable gun for me. I've had thousands of rounds through it. Very, very few, if any, issues. I have not needed to replace the top cover. That was an issue early on. They did fix it. As was known at the time, just to reiterate, the small cracking at the back of the top cover was actually an issue experienced by the original Vitiaz and Sega 9s especially. So, yeah, one might say they followed the print so closely, they actually replicated one of the early faults. Either way, they got up and running, and production stayed low. I looked, and I ordered one of these for a friend. I don't know how long it'd been sitting around a warehouse, in 2021, and it still had a serial of just under 10,000. Now, it was a pistol, and the carbines have different ranges, so between carbines and pistols, they had built maybe 20,000 and on from there. But it was off to a good start. In the beginning, they wanted to low rate production because they had very strict quality control. They checked every gun and really were being pushed not to turn out crap. Moving into 2020, right as the world was losing its mind and things were going south, KUSA was revealing the KR103. But it wasn't this version. It was actually a fixed stock version in the spring of that year. And originally it had a chrome-lined button rifle barrel. But I wanted the folder, so I actually had to wait another year. And then we had the proper 5.5 millimeter pin left side folder. And by this point, they have chrome-lined barrels and they're cold hammer forged. This is the version that I wanted, and it really is a dead ringer for an AK-103 and semi-automatic and SGL 2194. In fact, it actually has the grip reinforcing plate, which the original import did not. They replicated the style of furniture, even with the heat shield. And as they had done with the 9mm, they did a nice replica of the Russian magazine. So you had US-made mags, count as 3 parts if it matters under 922R, but made to Russian specs. And I think I got 5 of these, and they prove very reliable. And it has all your other AK Century series features like the long collar and the extended out muzzle device, bayonet lug, accessory lug, 90-degree gas block, proper thin profile barrel, and what have you. So at this point, things are pretty good. But COVID took a toll on really all of us in all of industry. Workers were laid off or didn't work for weeks or months at a time, so they lost their edge. Parts suppliers either got so far behind subcontractors or they went out of business themselves. Quality slipped, especially after 2021, and people started to try to catch back up again. I noticed an increase in QC issues with KUSA and with many other manufacturers besides, even Arsenal. It's like, when you go on a long vacation and you try to get back to work afterwards and you have kind of a whole week of Mondays. Well, imagine if the whole industry had that. And there were still part shortages for months, even into 2022. This seems to be the time when momentum was slowing down. But we still have one new product to look at. Post-COVID, KUSA did manage to turn out the KP104 pistol. Of course, it just has a block in the end originally, but all the mechanisms are there, so you can install either a stock or an arm brace. They actually did offer one. Hinge here. 12.5-inch chrome-lined hammer-forged barrel. It has the full-length gas piston, but the combo gas block. I really like this configuration. The 104, of course, is 760 by 39. The 102 in Russia would have been the 5.56, and of course the 105 is the 5.45 version. These were when you started to see some noteworthy QC issues. Now, some, like the rear sight, using the 1,000 meter versus the proper 500, I can accept that just because they were straight with me. I asked them, and they said it would cost too much to make a whole different rear sight for something that most people would notice. hey, respect for the honesty. And if you really want the right rear sight, like I did, at that time, KVAR had them. So I bought a 500 meter rear sight, popped it in. There we go. There were some other kind of issues, most to do with fit and finish, not many to do with safety. In fact, things like the trunnions, the bolt groups, seemed to remain quite solid. It was more of just, even though the parts were good, how they were being put together, and probably more importantly, there started to be signs that the final quality control checks weren't all being done before these things left the factory. So just because something doesn't get fully QC checked, that doesn't mean it's a bad gun. It just means the potentiality for issues to slip through goes way up. So, yeah. But these do seem like they were pretty temporary in 2022, and I only noticed them for a few weeks, a couple of months at most. Seems like by 2023, the QC was under control. I don't think the quality was ever quite as high as it had been back in 2019, 2020, but I'm thinking more just like the finish, the riveting. It's still fine, and I want to be honest with you, I've handled quite a few Segas and SGLs. They weren't perfect either, especially the Segas. I saw more than a few paint blims on Segas and some wonky rivets. So I've got to be fair about that. And again, even if you didn't want the guns, having Russian-style mags was quite nice. Some other parts, muzzle brakes. Here's that arm brace they did. It is for the 5.5, not the 4.5. Note, it does have the kind of latch point, so it's really meant for the KP9. But it will actually work on this as well. It just won't quite latch the same. But it looks fine, especially, again, for the Sega 9, the Vitiaz clone. But again, I went this route with this one. There's foam on my hand. Just because of the whole arm brace situation we were running into last year. They were offering something that no one else was. And yes, it was at a price point. In the beginning, the prices, especially for the shotguns and the 9mm, were not bad. But there was creep, especially by the time you get to the side folders. But then again, these are all specific parts. Now, did KUSA make these in-house? Not most of them. Most were outsourced using their specifications, and subcontractors supplied the parts. That's how manufacturing works. Sig Sauer, Colt, FN, Bushmaster, they do it too. But there's a problem with that because, well, contractors like getting paid. And 2023 started to get rockier and rockier for KalashnikovUSA and didn't exactly end great for them. But they did have some projects on the horizon. The KR-101, the 5.56 version of this gun. And there was serious talks and research into doing a 5.45 version. So basically like an SGO 3194 and AK-74M. So they still had things on the horizon, but they made a lot of missteps when it came to marketing and their image and, frankly, where they put their money. To put it succinctly and bluntly, by the end of last year, KUSA was in debt. Major financial straits, major issues, just struggling to get enough parts together to get some guns out the door to hold off the bank another day. Because in the modern business world, it's not about the cash you have in the bank, it's about the loans you can take from the bank. And, well, KUSA, well, I like their products. For years, they had some kind of rocky financial times. Backers changed, investors changed. Heck, at one point, Mossberg was involved. And so their credit wasn't fantastic, which meant high interest rates, high loan rates, and sooner or later, banks are kind of calling in loans. Some of this was not their fault. Their firearms, for the most part, even with a little bit of QC slippage, were good. And they were delivering some products that no one else could. I mean, I've had my 9 here since, like I said, 2019. And the only issue I had is after like 4,000 or 5,000 rounds, the retainer for the firing pin walked out. And it actually kept captive in here because of the rails. I only noticed it, I think it might have even been on a video when I pulled it out for disassembly. All I had to do was tap it back in. Ultimately, I got a new pin, a little bit larger, but after that many rounds, that's fine. As for the KR-103, the only issue I had wasn't with the gun, either the fixed stock, which I didn't keep, or the folder I did, but it was actually with the mags. When they first released these, they didn't have enough of their replica mags, so they shipped them with different mags. But, to their credit, they actually gave you a voucher, so when these mags were ready, you could send in and get them. And would you believe it? They actually honored them. And finally, the KP-104, the one I had the most issues with, but even that wasn't bad. Okay, the rear sight, no big deal. I had no issues with my front sight. I've had no issues with rusting or really poor rivets. I admit the QC is maybe not quite as tight as on the 2020 KR-103. The only issue I had was they made a goof. Remember how I said workers were off, subcontractors, all that? A batch of these came out and they gave them the wrong safety selectors. Instead of giving them the proper, 103 style, rifle style, they put KS-12 shotgun selectors, which you might not think makes a difference. It does. They will work, sort of, but you don't want that. Luckily, replacing a safety is very easy. No tools required. Literally take your top cover off, rotate, and take out. And once this issue was caught, they immediately, when I contacted them, customer service, they sent me the right selector, told me to keep the shotgun selector, which I'm happy to do because I do have a Sega 12, so it's a spare for it. Why not? And they actually sent me an extra mag or two for my trouble. So that's actually why I have a pouch of these now. A couple with each gun, and then a couple for their oopsie. You really can't say fairer than that. And I think it might have taken 2 weeks between contacting them and getting the parts in the mail. The guns, all 3 have been reliable. More than that, they've all been soft shooting. I know overgassing is kind of a current AK concern. Well, for what it's worth, none of these, including the shorty, feel gassy. So, yeah. And ultimately, the biggest issue with 2023, the market. It was just a low year, especially towards the end. Not just for KUSA, but for pretty much every single person in the gun industry, myself included. 2020, 2021 had been record years, or at least near record. 2022 started off pretty strong, petered out a bit towards the end, but by 23, it was down. And I completely understand. For one thing, people were no longer getting checks from the government. Another, they were back to work, hopefully. And for a third, they bought a bunch of guns, probably some they probably should not have when they were sitting at home, so they didn't need more guns. And, of course, fourth, credit card bills finally came due. Reality hit home. This is expected. Every time there's a bump, like 2008, 2012, 2013, there's always a fall off. Anyone who's been in the gun industry should plan for that. Take your profits, take your earnings, take your good fortune, take those profits and stick them back for a rainy day. That's how the big boys weather the storm. Guess what KUSA didn't do? Not only did they act like the good times would never end, They hired a porn star, okay, an ex-porn star, to celebrate with him. That was not a good look. I'm gonna be honest. Personally, I don't care. I can sincerely say I've never watched porn in my life. Wasn't really a choice. But the firearms community is a family community, and generally speaking, a conservative, but not always community. Bad move. Bad move. Okay, even if she's a shooter, and she says she is, whatever. I'm not going to call anyone a liar, but bad PR move, and I'm sure it cost them a decent amount of money. And it didn't just stop there. It SHOT Shows for the last few years. They had extravagant and very pricey booths. Think over $250,000 each year. Maybe sometimes even a lot more. And they just kept pumping their products up. It's like they looked at Arsenal and thought, I can do better than that. Hold my beer. Because Arsenal's pretty proud of their stuff and not afraid to say. Remember the whole gold standard, the game changer crap? And I'm going to be honest. I actually think KUSA's products are at least within spitting distance of current Arsenals. I think they are good, or at least when they started off. But there's something to be said for being humble and just sticking to your guns, quite literally. Insisting you're the best just paints a big target on you. And hiring an ex-porn star just puts a neon flashing light on it. And you're doing this at a time when the market's slumping, so your income's down. And on top of all that, while they have some good solid products like these and the Sega 12 clones, they did a lot of weird furniture things and made some just bizarre decisions on accessories. Stuff that 99% of people did not want. That's why Arsenal still has, or FIME, still has those Mikhail Kalashnikov, what do they call them? Oh yeah, Jubilee guns. That's how unimportant they are. No one cared. It's like the only Russian gun still sort of available at the importer/distributor. AK guys don't really get into commemorative guns. Not unless it's like built to military specs in some automatic form, like an ARM-9F clone from Arsenal. The good news about KUSA, most all of their guns are pretty much as close to mil-spec as law allows. So they were there. And I actually applaud them for not getting in a hurry and cranking out a ton of products or making a ton of promises. Some companies, PSA, say they're going to be making 50 new products a year, and in reality, 30 come out, and of those, 5 or 6 have issues. And to be fair, it still means 20 or so don't, but you see what I'm saying. Still waiting on that STG-44 clone, guys. Yeah, so I kind of appreciate the more humble approach there. And again, I can tell you firsthand, me, that they were sincerely working on the KR-101 for over the last year. And they had told me after that they were going to focus on an AK-74M, a 545 clone. The reason it got put on the back burner was the ammo situation. 223, 556, easier to get than 545. But they were going to do the 545. They were going to start off with the 16-inch versions and then try to move down to the compact 12-inch versions. And they did have a few new accessories come out over the years. For example, the faux moderator here. This is just a slip over YouTube. This is not a silencer or suppressor. It just goes over a full-length barrel, replacing the original muzzle brake, which is cool. I thought it was neat. That's why I picked it up for mine. So, man, they were putting a little much into marketing, and maybe not enough into not just paying their employees on the floor, but more importantly, not paying their contractors, their parts suppliers. And yes, they have racked up debts in the 7 figures with more than one company. On the live stream, talks were mentioned about a foreign company. I have confirmed that at least one foreign company is involved that they owe money to. But more importantly, because we're here in the U.S., most of their contractors, at least primary, that they're buying directly from, they might source their stuff from overseas, but are American companies. So yeah, this is an American company out of Florida, Pompano Beach, owing other American companies money for parts that they've supplied. Like top covers, selectors, bolt groups, barrels, furniture. Again, no one makes this stuff totally in-house anymore. Not in North America. That's just not how it's done. I will say, though, they stuck very, very close to Russian pattern. I will admit, KUSA has a nice facility. They have a nice, modern, clean factory. Not speaking to how they treat their workers. I haven't heard any overt horror stories about how they treat their workers, but then again, I haven't talked to many workers. I have talked to some people that are down in Florida that live there. Some of the guys on the live stream are there. And it's a very modern structure on the factory, which is good. But probably something they could have done without. Their offices, their corporate headquarters are also very modern and fancy and, Fortune 500. There's probably a few million there that could have been better spent. And that's kind of the issue. And I've heard from multiple sources over the years that it's a pretty top-heavy corporation where the executives are getting pretty good salaries. They're in nice, cushy offices, private, facilities, rec rooms. And again, they're spending a lot of money on advertising, on, spokespeople, on their booth at SHOT Show, other trade show booths. That's all fine. Kind of like my mother used to say, well, if you got the money, honey. They didn't. That money should have been better spent either paying their workers on the factory floor and their parts suppliers. And you can float this for a while. And that's pretty much what it seems like KUSA was doing the second half of 2023 into the first half of 2024. But eventually, the bill comes due. With the gun market still kind of slumping, and with the KR101 project, and I will say they have been working on it. It is not vaporware. They have been working on it, along with a few other projects. But with everything else going on, and some people leaving or being let go, it's hard to say. Yeah. They were hoping that would save the factory, save the company, but it wasn't enough. And of course, R&D costs money itself. So they were trying to spend money to make money to pay off creditors, kind of doing this, dance, trying to juggle. Well, really going back to February, March, the bank started making rumblings. And no, I don't know which bank they loaned with, and I'm sure there was more than one, but their primary bank where they were getting loans from, again at pretty high interest rates. And the bank was like, hey, you need to pay this off. Notes get called in. You know how it goes, I'm sure. And that's kind of where we're at now. Going back to where this all started. Like I said, I was gone last weekend, came back to this. And is KUSA closed? Are they bankrupt? Technically, no. But hard times. So that's what I mean. People saying that it's over, done with, not quite. Because, I know this will shock you, the bank doesn't want to own an AK factory in Florida. As neat as it might be to own like a Capital One branded AK, yeah, they want to work with KUSA, the powers that be, formerly RWC, to try to figure out a way or kind of structure some kind of bankruptcy that works best for everyone, because the bank wants to get as much of its investment and hopefully some profit back too. Keep in mind, there are multiple types of bankruptcy, especially for corporations. Now, KUSA is a privately owned and controlled company, for what it's worth. So that has some pros and cons in it of so, but this is an illegal breakdown. Plus, I hated torts and case law of that nature anyway when I was there. But right now, we're kind of in a holding pattern. We are hitting critical mass. Up until March, there was hopes that the KR 101 could keep them afloat another year, but looks like no. So last week, give or take, they suspended orders on their website. Now, the website's still up and running. It's just the shopping cart's disabled. And this happens from time to time for every company. Sometimes if you're way behind or you're running short on some parts, you'll suspend more orders until you can get caught up. Perfectly logical. Hopefully, they will fulfill any outstanding agreements. I will say my one small and one little bit bigger dealing with KUSA's customer service were positive. By the way, I did not get any of these guns directly from KUSA, so they didn't handpick them. I literally bought them and paid money. And paid money to shoot them myself. So, yeah. The only freebies I got from them were the "we're sorry" mags and the correct safety. That's where we're at right now. They're trying to work things out. Now, I've heard people talk on the internet about PSA wanting to buy them, Century wanting to buy them, and I've heard a few other companies, but those are kind of the biggest ones you hear. The thing is, what is there to buy? One thing that kind of surprised me, they don't actually have many guns or even parts in their warehouse or even in their factory. Remember how they couldn't pay those subcontractors? Well, that's kind of a result of it. Some workers have been laid off. There are, of course, machines there. There's a building, but it's a building. There, I'm sure, are a few parts, but not all that many completed firearms. Not enough to matter. So if someone were to buy them, what they're really interested in is the KUSA, the KalashnikovUSA name. Now, for the record, they are not associated with, they don't have investors in common with Kalashnikov Concern, formerly Izhmash, Izhevsk in Russia. They are a U.S. company. But let's just say before the sanction, they were really good friends with some people over there, which is perfectly fine. RWC imported Segas for years. So it only makes sense. So you got the name. And you have all their drawings, blueprints, tooling, what most people would call shorthand TDP. And looking at their TDP, sure looks Russian to me. Things like the exactly right stampings for the receivers, proper bolts, proper hump under the trigger here, the reinforcing plate, the muzzle devices. This came with a 102, 104 style brake before I swapped it out. The mags. When there are changes, they tend to be just because of manufacturing in the USA. They know they're not quite Russian spec, but they're based on what they have to work with. Right here, right now, where does KUSA stand? They are not in bankruptcy yet. That has not been filed. While they are not accepting new orders, as best I know, they have not officially closed. However, there have been layoffs, or at least talks of layoffs, and people leaving. They don't have really any inventory of note. So that's the bad news. The chance is that there is a small grace period, which we're in kind of the middle of right now, and a time for negotiation with the bank and a time to look to new investors. Like I said, Century Arms, Palmetto State, a couple others have been mentioned. I'd almost even say, what about Pioneer? I know that sounds strange with my history, but hey, fair's fair. The PAC works, and they're in Florida. I don't know. I'd almost rather see them kind of pick up the intellectual property in the name of KUSA, and that's really what it is. I mean, hopefully they would get some tooling, but it's really the name and the TDP. Keep in mind, too, they even mentioned on their website, what's important here is proper heat treat. proper rivet processes and barrel manufacturing, head spacing, just, proper specs of things. And that is where they seem to be on their best leg here. Even if sometimes final assembly or final QC slipped from day to day. That can be tightened up. So, will someone invest? Will someone buy them in full or in part? Negotiations ongoing, closed doors, private matter. No one knows yet. But we will know soon. I don't know exactly how soon. I don't think anyone does. It could be within a week. It might be the better part of a month. But something will have to be done because bills need paying, creditors calling due, and time's running out, and KUSA's management's options are running out too. Again, though, as I said earlier, this would not be the first or even the second management shakeup there. So, I don't know. Maybe Arsenal. Arsenal should step in. After all, they've had problems getting guns out of Bulgaria, and they do have a history with the SGL series, the Legions. That'd be an interesting partnership. They definitely have a very similar business mentality, for good or ill. I don't know. I'd almost rather see a small company get involved, though, that wouldn't care about marketing so much. They would just put their nose to the grindstone, continue making the guns they're already doing, make sure QC is up to 2019, 2020 standards, and slowly but surely release new products. Because it's good that they didn't get in a hurry to release the 101 or other guns, but we need new things. The company needs lifeblood. I don't want them to pull like a PSA where every week it seems like they've got a new product, or at least they say there's one coming out. That gets old too. But there's a happy in between, and I think Zastava USA hits it quite well. They release new guns every year. They almost all come to market as promised, on time, on budget. And that's another thing. In this market, 2024, while the AK is more expensive than it was years ago, it is a little cheaper now. KUSA is going to have to find a way, or whoever takes this up, to maintain quality, if not improve it, and keep the features, but keep the price point the same or lower. And I know that's tough. I really do, especially if they try to source American parts and labor. But challenges sometimes breed innovation. With that, what about the future? I've seen a lot of speculation, a lot of inference, a lot of guessing. That's not how I want to do. My background is as a historian. I am more interested in what is happening and what has happened. While it can be fun to speculate on what will or could happen, ultimately, it's navel-gazing. And I don't want to do that, because I don't know the future. You don't either. If we did, we'd all be rich on the stock market. Then again, if we all did it, then there wouldn't be money to be made there. What I can hope for, I don't want to see this go away. So much time and energy, especially the workers at the factories and all that, and the engineers, not the higher-ups, but it's the people. There's a lot of effort into these, and it shows. These guns are well made and made with a close eye to detail to be as Russian as possible. We don't want to lose that. We don't want to have an American company go out of business. We don't want to have an option go away from the AK market. Even if you didn't buy a KUSA gun, even if you thought they were too expensive, them simply being on the market as an option was good for Pioneer, PSA, Zastava, Arsenal, WBP, FB Radom, Century, Wassers, Kuger, Romania. You see what I mean? So we don't want them to go. Plus, you're talking about Americans losing their jobs, who did nothing wrong, who probably put as much energy as they could into it. So I want to see them continue. I want new management that takes money out of the glitz thing. Heck, don't go to SHOT Show next year. Save that money to pay your people, pay your subcontractors. Don't worry about it. It's the age of YouTube. So I want them to succeed. And I think they will in some form. The name is catchy. And the product is unique. This is just not your average AKM clone or copy. No one else has done or is doing an AK 101, 103, 104 clone. No, the Palmetto State doesn't count. Not when you're talking clone correct. If you're happy with your PSA, I'm happy for you. And I don't mean that snarkily. But for people who missed out on Segas, Vepers, this truly is the next best thing. Or the only thing in the case of like the 9mm. We don't want to lose that. And eventually the market will recover. This just needs to be weathered. So hopefully we'll hear something in May. Hopefully it'll be mostly good news. I will be very surprised if there's not, at least a momentary cessation of production as things are reorganized. Maybe 6 months. I don't know. But be honest, if you have one of these and want to sell it, fine. But I'd hang on to it because we don't know the future. It's possible this is a blip and they'll be gone forever. It's also possible whoever buys them will turn them into crap. Other product thing. On the other hand, it may not be so bad. Look how CZ came in for Colt. And lots of other companies have been in dire straits. Some of them in actual bankruptcy, foreclosure, what have you. While that's on the horizon for KUSA, it hasn't hit yet. And so there's always a chance for a third way. It can't be business as usual because that's not working. But it's not either or, gone completely or business as usual. My prediction is kind of generic and vague as it is we'll see a third way. We'll see someone else come in. And no, I don't know who it is. I really don't. I know no more than you do there. And after some reorganization, and heck, manufacturing might even move. I don't know if it'll even stay in Florida. Who knows? Because again, the main thing here is the name and the data package and the specs for heat treat and all that. That's what's important here. Because anyone can, make these if they follow the guidelines. So yeah. That's what's going on, guys. I wish I could definitively say, but I try to be straight and honest with you, and with myself too. I want this to succeed, but I'm not gonna BS me or you. They made some pretty big mistakes, but luckily, in my opinion, not with the guns themselves, not with the products. The few hiccups they had were no worse or better than any other company. No, their mistakes had to do with marketing, budgeting, press, and, yeah, things of that nature. But what do you think? Do you own a KUSA? Maybe you're like the one gentleman last night that didn't even realize they actually hit the market. These never did hit high-rate production, and they shouldn't. These are never going to be built in the numbers like Palmetto or Zastava or Kusa. And that's okay, because this is a niche item, and it should be. And no matter what, it's an expensive item to make compared to your basic AKM. Because when you really look at an AK100 series, every single part is unique. Very few are interchangeable with an AKM, AK-74, really. Not if you want to be correct. And I will be honest, KUSA's guns impressed me. They are correct, with very small and few exceptions, and actually over the years even fewer have popped up. Even if you don't want a gun, like I said, we need the mags. We need those 101 mags, the 223 Russian style mags. It's great that we got the 7.62 and the 9mm. We also got the Sega mags, 12 gauges. But I'd like to see that. I'd also like to see them have a surplus of parts where they can supply parts either for repair or replacement for other people, maybe for their Russian Segas, or if they want to do their own builds. It'd be kind of neat if they do like a do-it-yourself kit, like we've seen with M plus M and a few others over the years. Just ideas. There's a lot of places they can go. And there's news recently of Steelcase 76239 American production finally being launched. That'll be very helpful to this market. And even if not, their research into the 101 5.56 guns should prove interesting, because that is a big interest these days for a lot of people. But yeah, I wanted to just do this. I thought about throwing in shooting clips or doing all that, but I just wanted to get this video out because I'm saying this today. By tomorrow, it'll be outdated news. And so, yeah. And like I said, I'm going to be launching kind of an AK channel. It's a supplement to this one. There'll still be like the bigger videos here, but minutiae on AKs or answering questions that I've already answered a few times can go over there. Plus just kind of posting our old classic videos that are still worth watching, maybe with drinking involved. And again, if you'd like to help support us, check out the Patreon. I been out shooting a couple of times this month, and actually should be going out this next week with a new AK, well, sort of new, to try out and review. So we'll see how that all goes. Hope everyone's having a good weekend. This is Misha, and we'll all catch you very soon next time.